Hey guys, welcome to Admissions Roadmap MBA Success Stories. Our mission here is to bring on successful Indian candidates who have gone to top business schools and then come onto the platform and help uh, coach you to get into those same business schools around the world. Um, Typically, we have, when we're looking at Indian candidates, we have a lot of engineers, many of them from IITs. Um, Today's candidate is an engineer, but did not follow a traditional work path after the engineering. Um, the most unconventional background that I've seen that has gotten into one of the best schools in the world, MIT Sloan School of Management. In today's show, it's Sumit Sharma. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashwin.
Sumit has been kind enough to do this despite certain health concerns, and we really truly appreciate you doing this for the rest of the Indians who want to get into MIT. But before we jump into the journey that you had from undergrad all the way back into all the way to MIT, let's talk about your background a little bit.
Sure.
You did your engineering from
Right.
NIT Agartala, as I see on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
You did a whole host of activities while you were in the engineering school. So
Right.
congratulations on those leadership activities. But if you were to put a pin on what your background is and what your experience is, can you explain that a little more to all of us listening?
Um, that's really interesting. So the thing I'd probably, in order to explain that, I'd probably go a bit back into the
Yes, please.
past. So I grew up in this really, really remote village in Uttar Pradesh. And the name is also very unique. It's called Munnapur.
Okay.
But it had no electricity, no amenities, nothing. My father used to bike just to do his I think secondary education for about almost 15 kilometers or so. And just devoid of all these resources, I grew up kind of building and breaking things with my brother, in order to solve day-to-day problems related to farming or anything else. And I think that is where the interest grew, and that is what has kind of motivated me to follow the path that you see out there and that I followed. So I grew up, and even when I was doing my schooling, I continued to build things. I was really active in science projects or building any other thing. And even when I was at my home, my mom used to call me a kabadi wala, but I had so much stuff around me, and I would just build anything out of that. And that was what, again, motivated me to pursue mechanical engineering so that I can be hands-on. I really like touchy-feely stuff. So that has been my journey, and that is what I will pinpoint and say, this experience of mine, my childhood, is what has uh, forced me or what has motivated me to follow what I followed.
Um, you got extraordinary grades during your engineering. I think a 9.15 GPA is no joke for anybody at some of the top schools. You were part of the robotics club, the automotive engineers, sports clubs. You were a technical secretary. You were part of the conclaves within NIT. You
Yeah.
seem to do it all, but a lot of focus on robotics, aero modeling, clearly speaking to your background and to your interest in breaking things and fixing things. No better school than MIT to continue that journey. But
Right.
between NIT and between MIT, there was a whole bunch of stuff that you did.
Right.
What was the work that you did after your undergraduate degree?
So again, during my undergrad, while I was doing all these stuff, I was also a part of this society that we formed as a student called VCAN, and it is still active. And we used to go out and reach out to these village students across or near NIT, and we used to teach them, through new mechanisms or through fun stuff. And while I was doing all that, I also participated in Jagriti Yatra. I don't know if you know about that.
That I do. A few
Okay.
people who come on here have actually gone through that, so that's quite exceptional.
Yeah. So when I went to the Jagriti Yatra, it kind of I felt that there are a lot of things that as an engineer I can do, and probably if I follow the path of going to an automobile industry to Tata or Maruti or someplace there, I would be probably sitting in front of a computer and typing in something and not doing anything productive that I have been doing throughout my life. And as I said, I love to be really hands-on. So I decided that rather than following that curriculum or that path, I would not sit for my college recruiting sessions. And that was really important decision for me, because I knew that if I sit and if I get into any company, my family would almost force me to get into it, because we were not really financially very stable even during that time. So I took this really bold decision, and then through Jagrati Yatra Network, this really unique opportunity came up where the government of Haryana School Education Department, particularly the Principal Secretary of School Education there, her name was Surina Rajan. She was wanting to kind of completely change the scenario of education in Haryana, and they were trying to improve learning level outcomes across 14,000 schools in the state, and they were looking for new young people who are energetic and passionate about it to work with them. And I thought that this is a nice opportunity. I went to Delhi, interviewed with them. Boston Consulting Group, BCG people were also supporting the government of Haryana on this initiative. There is also a TED talk on this by one of the principals of BCG. It's called How to Fix a Broken Education System.
Yeah.
So did that for about a year. It was really, really amazing what we could do in just a year. And I think that that program, that journey is still continuing there in Haryana. A lot of new, unique things came up. I personally undertook, for example, the MIS development, teacher training, collection of data analytics, and all that. So that was my part in education for about a year. But I think somewhere deep down, I was missing that part where I could be, as I said, hands-on. I could, tinker around with things, break and build things. And that is when this opportunity for developing new medical devices to cater to the problem of unmet clinical needs in Indian healthcare system came up with Translational Health Science and Technology Institute. And that's a really unique story in itself. I had only an undergrad degree with myself, and they were looking for at least a graduate degree person. I did not look at that, and I applied. I went through the entire process. It was almost 7 rounds of interviews. And after that, I got to know that they are looking for graduate people. But then they didn't take me in that round. But then they published another round where they said that undergraduate is favorable but not necessary, and then they took me through that.
This is the Department of Biotechnology, the Social Innovation Fellow that you were a part of?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. So I worked there with the Department of Biotechnology. So I was working under the Department of Biotechnology, but at Translational Health Science and Technology Institute as a Social Innovation Fellow. So this was a very unique opportunity. It was laid along the lines of Stanford India Biodesign Program. I don't know if anyone knows about it, but it's a pretty unique and very successful program, which was run in collaboration with Stanford, IIT Delhi, and AIIMS.
I'm looking at some of that material as we speak as well. It's quite impressive, I must say.
So one of my mentors, he was actually a Stanford India Biodesign alumni. And then another mentor, he was a Harvard Medical School postdoc. And then along with some other mentors from IIT Delhi and All India Institute of Medical Sciences. And together, I spent about a year just diving deep into the Indian healthcare system. I had gone to Bangalore, did some visits there. I spent time in ICUs, in surgery rooms. I spent almost 2 months sitting with a doctor in his OPD room. I spent almost 2 months in a neonatal ICU, spent almost 2.5 months visiting families with healthcare workers, Asha workers, Anganwadi workers, and all that. And based on this years that I spent on the field, I created a list of almost 400 needs that we can fulfill or that we can cater to. And then went through a process of filtering these needs and came to the top 3 needs, and then developed new medical devices from scratch to cater to those needs. And one was a bone marrow biopsy device. Another one was a device, a point of care device that could help you diagnose hypocalcemia. And then third one was a portable transport incubator, which is what I'm continuing now through I4 or I to the power 4. And that I did for almost 2 years.
Is that the one for which you guys had applied for a patent?
So all of them are currently under the process of patent, plus one more which I worked just prior to Sloan.
You're like the
Uh,
Indian Tony Stark, studying in MIT. But it's just so impressive. But then after this, you did something even more unconventional.
right.
You worked as a chief of staff and advisor to the member of parliament of Shillong. How did
Yeah.
that come about?
So again, when I was done with this program with the Department of Biotechnology, though they wanted me to continue, but I was of the opinion that uh, the most part that I have seen in India and the problems that I have seen in India have been centered around North India, particularly Haryana, UP, and all these places. And that is what comes out in my designs when I develop anything new to cater to any problem. And if I want to if I want to develop problems that cater to a bigger set of people around the country, then I need to move around. I need to look at other people. I need to understand their problems not only in healthcare but across the spectrum. In education, electricity, sanitation, water, healthcare, everything. And then I started to look at such opportunities where I could get to travel in some other place of India, which is pretty unique. And so I found this opportunity where Tata Trust had formed this program called Spark, supporting parliamentarians through analysis and research in constituency. And there were a set of 20 member of parliaments. And these Tata Trust people, they were looking for 20, again, young and enthusiastic people who could help these MPs in improving development in their region. And I saw this as a really, interesting opportunity for me to be very close to the end users, to understand their needs, and in the process also implement solutions that could help address those needs. And again, the interview process was again very, very unique for me. I don't know, it turns out that way somehow. But then I worked with you were asking something?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so then I started working with the member of parliament, and he, over time, he said that, you are not only working with me as, someone who is supporting in development, but you are working now as a chief of staff and an advisor to me. So then I continued working even in that role. So it was even a broader role. So I was helping him in his parliament stuff while also working in the constituency. So what I did there was in the beginning for about a month or two, I gathered all the data across different spectrums and tried to understand what are all the problems that are going in the region. And there were really, really big problems going on. Almost 1,400 schools disappeared from the map in the last 2 years, just disappeared. Education-wise, this was a really big problem. Healthcare was really bad. Maternal death rates, even child death rates were increasing. People had no access to clean drinking water. Electricity was not there. So all these problems were going on. So that is when then I decided to partner with public and private firms. I decided to leverage corporate social responsibility fund to address these problems. I started designing new solutions, and I raised, I would say, almost 17-20 crores, and installed almost, I'd say, 2,500 or so street lights. Implemented a large-scale education improvement system, partnering with Bharti Education, which is under the Bharti Foundation, which is under Airtel. And then I also tried to initiate a program wherein we would install solar-powered water purifiers for people to get access to water and all those things. Yeah.
Yours is the inverse of any Indian applicant applying to major schools. Most people work at a consulting firm, a bank, or do analytics or an IT company with a spattering of some of this on the side just to prove that they have extra bit of the personality. Yours, this is all of it. Education transformation, healthcare transformation, back to educational transformation and healthcare transformation, and everything else within a region for the member of parliament. You've had such a unique journey. I can see why it's so alluring for people or for schools to want a candidate like you who's had such a different background. But let's talk about the need for an MBA itself. You're doing all of this. At what point did you think, okay, I think now it's time to pursue an MBA?
I think the first thought came when I was working in healthcare. when I was developing all these new medical devices, and I participated in a lot of hackathons as well. And I participated in other pitching sessions where I could pitch these solutions. And the common feedback that I got was, though my ideas, those are solutions that I was proposing were really good, they lagged, so to say, I mean, my pitch lagged, uh, good business model, how to enter a market strategy, and all those things. And that was the first time that it struck me that probably getting an MBA will help me. I am developing these solutions, it's good, but how am I able to make sure that these solutions reach the end user? Um, so that was the time that I started thinking about MBA. Then during the time when I was working with the member of parliament, I continued to think, and I realized that probably it's a good idea. Though the fact that because I had been working in such roles, I had not been earning much. I think around $500 per month was what I was earning. That's around as well. So then taking this decision was really difficult. But
How did it make you feel, given the societal pressures? This is a very personal question that I have.
uh
I'm assuming your friends from NIT went on to jobs in the corporate world. Um, I'm assuming there was a certain part of you that may have felt, or even through your parents' view, saying, "Why isn't our kid going and taking these jobs?" How did you deal with the internal struggle, if at all you had that?
I don't think I ever had that struggle up until the point I was applying to the MBA to B schools. That was the point when I realized, oh my God, just the application in itself is costing so much. Probably I should have worked in a corporate setting for probably a year or so. But before that, I was really content. I was really happy. I had a good work-life balance. I was playing badminton every day for 1.5 hours. So I never had that thought cross my mind at all. Uh, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, back to the research and MBA. You thought, okay, great. I think if I can combine certain business skills or knowledge of business, ability to build a business model around some of the wonderful ideas that I have and I've worked on, perhaps this will be a great winning combination. And so you thought, okay, MBA is the way. What
Mhm.
schools did you look at while you were applying to business school?
So when I had the thought for the first time during the healthcare thing, I just randomly applied to the Reliance Dhirubhai Ambani scholarship program, and I got through it. And that was the time when I realized, oh my God, I have gotten through this, and I have not really prepared for anything else. I had not given my GMAT, I had not given TOEFL or IELTS, any of those. I had not even thought about what I'll do because I had no idea that, I mean, that I will go to get through the scholarship program. So that was when I first quickly gave my GMAT, quickly gave my TOEFL, and then applied to Stanford because that scholarship is only catering to Stanford. I didn't get through Stanford during that time, and I know why. I mean, I didn't really have time or anything.
Why?
I think I was very naive when I was writing my application. It was the first time that I actually saw the application, and I only had 2 weeks. And within that time, while I was also working, it didn't really work out. But then I thought that now in the next year, when I finally decided that okay, I need to apply to the MBA, I was looking at schools which would have this culture of technology around it, the culture where people don't come out and say, "Oh, I'm a business graduate and I have a particular strata in my life and all that."
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be in a place where people are more to the ground, and somehow I felt that about Sloan. So I applied to MIT, and I applied only to MIT.
Oh, wow. Uh, let's talk very briefly now that we have the sidebar about the Reliance Dhirubhai Ambani scholarship. What's the process like there in order to apply? Because I'm assuming a lot of Indians would be interested in this.
Yeah, so I think from what I remember, you have to just submit a resume, and there is kind of a cover letter thing, not even a cover letter, a small essay that you have to write. I think when I gave it, it was around 150 words or something, but now I think it has gone up to around 300 words. And then you apply. That is the entire process. It's not very big. And then around 50 students get through it, out of which Stanford selects around 2 to 5.
That's it, right? That's the problem. Okay, so you applied only to MIT, a risky move, which I don't encourage most people unless you have such a unique background like you and know with conviction that this is the type of school I want to get into. We spoke offline about the research that you did, and you said, "Oh, maybe I'm not the right person for this." But talk about the research or the lack thereof of applying to MIT when applying to MIT.
Yeah, now in the hindsight, I do believe that I should have done more research, but I really didn't do any research. I just had MIT and Stanford were two names that were in my mind always. My brother was actually also a part of the Stanford India Biodesign program. Actually, he was the first batch there. So somehow Stanford I really liked the vibe of the place. And again, I liked MIT because of its uniqueness to technology and all the innovations that happen around the place. And I think the third one that I was looking at was Harvard, because my mentor was from Harvard Medical School. His wife was from Harvard Business School, so I had heard about Harvard environment a bit from him. But while I was working with a member of parliament, I met a few people who were from Harvard Business School. I didn't really like the vibe, so I thought Harvard is probably out of the picture. And then I applied only to MIT. Yeah, so that was all that I did.
That's pretty good. Let's go in a little more depth about the essays so that we can coach other Indians on how you tackle this.
Sure.
We spoke a little offline, but at the onset there are two parts to the essay, and then there's a subsequent one. One is the cover letter that you need to write. From what I see, probably in the year that you applied, it says that MIT Sloan seeks students with certain personal characteristics who are independent, authentic, fearlessly creative, who are true doers, who can redefine solutions. Clearly, we've looked at the background. We know what you're talking about. It just says write a cover letter to the senior director of admissions. How did you tackle this essay?
So what I did was first I reached out to my friends who had gone abroad and studied at their universities here, and just seek their advice on how I should tackle it, what I should write, what I should focus on, and all that. And then what I did was I just divided the cover letter into 4 parts. Though it's not really that, it does not provide you that much space to do that, because I think it's only
words.
300 words. Yeah. But I divided it into 4 parts. And the first part, I just talked about what I want to do. And I had written something along the lines of I wanted to create an environment, I wanted to create new healthcare solutions for people in developing economies, such that they can get access to these solutions. And then I talked about how MIT and how Sloan could play a role in helping me do that. That was my first para. Then I think in the second and third para, I talked about my background. I specifically talked more about my work in healthcare. I skipped education part because I thought it didn't tie into what I am planning to do now. So I talked only about healthcare, what I did, what I developed, and what was that I saw there. So for example, I had seen 2 newborn babies die in front of me, and I wrote that in the application. Then in the third para, I then wrote about what I'm planning to do with the member of parliament, because that time I was working with the member of parliament. So in the third para, then I wrote about, given what I had seen in healthcare, I wanted to see what is happening in other parts of India, so that again, my solutions can be more comprehensive in nature. And then finally, in the last para, I talked about what I can do while I'm at Sloan. So I would want to partner, for example, with the Tata Center, with the MIT Trust Center, with the Legatum Center, and want to again continue to develop these solutions for the underserved communities across the globe. So that was my part of the cover letter.
Quite powerful, 75 words per paragraph to pack in an amazing essay. It is quite important, and I don't want to brush this off. It is quite important to know how to pitch your essay really well. Being selective and using only those experiences that necessarily speak to your goals rather than having to rehash your entire resume is extremely critical and vital. And that's what you did. And more importantly, showcasing that you have the experience that you're talking about, and then therefore building credibility that you're going to help improve healthcare in India. You will not believe how many people work in IT, have never ever looked at healthcare and say, oh, I want to improve the healthcare for my country. Well, have you done anything about it? What have you done? This is incredible as an essay that you've written. Let's talk about the video prompt. That's the essay number 2. It gives you 60 seconds, I think, where you have time to prepare beforehand, and it asks you to introduce yourself to your classmates. How did you go about tackling that essay?
So I gave that part a very personal touch. I talked about me as a person, what I like doing and what I have done in the past. So I talked about me as someone who has traveled a lot. I have traveled all the states in India, probably except 2. So I mentioned that I have gone from the cold desert of India, that is the Ladakh, to the Thar desert, and from Kerala and backwaters in Kerala in the south to the tribals of Nagaland in the east. I have traveled across India. I'm a sports person and I play competitive badminton. And after that, I talked a bit about I think I just said a sentence about my background, that I have worked with politicians, healthcare providers, government and bureaucrats in education, healthcare, and policy and development. That was it, that I talked about my background, nothing else. But I also gave a significant amount of time to my experience in Jagrati Yatra. I did mention that I had taken this journey which takes you across India, and you meet successful entrepreneurs and social change makers in different fields. And that was what led me to my background and my journey henceforth after that. And just that I'm looking forward to meeting everyone and wanting to continue to do what I have done here.
Be a true change maker, a true doer. You said that after you submit the 2 essays, if you get selected in a preliminary round, then you are invited to submit another essay. Do you remember what the topic of that essay was and how you tackled that?
Yes. So that essay was more around, how you would be a cultural fit at Sloan. How you can work to create a campus that is welcoming, inclusive, and increasingly diverse. That was essentially the end of the essay, but there were some other things that were written about that. So in that essay, what I talked about was what I was currently doing, some of the projects that I was doing with the Member of Parliament. And I also talked about another project that was in the pipeline. During that time, I think my project on providing access to potable drinking water and sanitation was the project that was in the pipeline. So I talked about that. I talked about my background, that I grew up working, in this really remote village, and that my childhood and subsequently my education and everything is what motivated me to develop new solutions, innovative solutions for the community while being frugal. Jugaad system is really something that I love, and I have used it throughout. I continue to do that. And then I talked about something that I'm doing, for example, and related it to my past and what I had written in the first para. And then I said that how this together, since I've done this, how I can continue to provide students at MIT, information and background about developing countries, how policy, bureaucrats, the government function, and what we can do to improve education, healthcare, and other developing problems of development in such countries.
It's quite impressive. You obviously got in through the interview. There's an interview. MIT again has very unique interview. What most people don't know, the behavior experience interview that MIT has is very similar to what McKinsey does in its actual recruiting, where they deep dive on one specific topic and ask you to go as deep as possible in its behavioral interview. Talk about the reflections of the interview and what was it like the entire interview process.
Yeah, so I think this is important that what you pointed out. MIT has a very unique interview process as compared to other business schools. Also, as compared to the business schools, MIT sends its own admissions people across the globe, and they conduct interviews themselves. They don't send alumni, for example. And again, the behavioral interview is the second unique part. Um, Now that I think about the interview, I think it was it got over really quickly. I think the interview time was supposed to be 40 minutes, but mine got over in 20. And so I was really skeptical why it happened. Yeah, the interviewer just asked me questions. All the questions were related to my work with the member of parliament, and none of the questions were asked about my prior work. So they asked about what has been difficult, how I tackled it, what has been the most important project for me. So that was when I talked about my project with Bharati Foundation in education. It was really important, and it was close to me because by the time, so I started this project sometimes in April, and by the time the project was to be implemented, I had already left the job, and it got implemented in March 2018, and I had left the work in December 2017. But when it was going to be implemented, the member of parliament and the village heads and the district magistrate, they all came together and they asked me to come and be a part of the inauguration ceremony there. They booked my flights and booked my stay there, and I went from Delhi just to be a part of the inauguration ceremony. So it was really close, that people understood. So I talked about that a bit. Yeah, and I think there were some other questions about other projects that I had done and how I raised money. So my other friends or other colleagues of mine, they used to jokingly call me CSR King because of the money that I had raised. So I talked a bit about that. And I think the final question was, any conclusive remarks that you have? And I said, I look forward to Sloan.
That's a pretty confident and bold move, man. I like it. You got into Sloan. Talk about the day you got the admit letter or the admit call.
I got the call. I was playing badminton. My phone rang and I was told that I got into Sloan, and I had really mixed emotions and mixed feelings because I had been deliberating also about whether I will be able to go and take up MBA because of the cost that I'll have to bear. But at the same time, I was enthusiastic to see what happens and whether I'll get through or not. So yeah, I was playing badminton. My phone rang. I picked it up, and first thing was I told all the friends that with whom I was playing there. Then I called up my brother. Then I called up my girlfriend, and then I took all my friends to Narula's. Yeah.
You didn't call up your parents?
Pardon?
You didn't call up your parents?
I didn't, because I wanted to kind of go and personally tell them.
Understood. I was like, wait a minute, your parents in this whole journey never appeared. Your girlfriend appeared, your friends went to Narula's with you. Okay, good.
My parents are, they're really simple people because we came from this really, we were farmers. The way I told my parents, for example, I didn't really tell them that I have gotten into MIT. I told them that I have gotten into one of the best school in the world, and that needs to have more, personal touch to it. Really close to my parents, and in fact, one of my aim is to start a scholarship fund for people from developing countries to get into business schools in the name of my parents. But that's like something later on.
Part of what we do at Admissions Roadmap here is in the name of my mom. Typically, we run a scholarship, but it's not publicized. It's just one person gets a scholarship here over the last 4 years, 3 years since my mom's passing. So I completely appreciate and admire what you do, man. You then went to MIT. Let's talk about the whole year that has been the 1 year journey. Particularly, I want to know in terms of the career opportunities that are available for internationals. I see on the school website, 32% go into consulting, 32% go into tech, maybe software, telecom, or something else, 21% manufacturing, and 14% financial services. I was surprised, actually. The consulting part doesn't surprise me, and the tech part doesn't surprise me. Is that truly reflective even for internationals where there are visa challenges, etc.?
Probably not. I'm confused. So for consulting and for tech, I think probably that would also be pretty reflective of internationals. I'm not very sure about financial services. A lot of banks, for example, and other investment services, they have stopped giving, this H1B support for internationals. So I think in financial services, probably the scenario is not the same. But I do know quite a lot of international students who are getting into that. So that is why I said I'm confused.
Hmm.
So I think, for example, Goldman Sachs is one big name who have stopped giving H1B support now. Um, so yeah, I think in that sense, it's pretty reflective. A lot of students go and prioritize consulting, and then a lot of them go for tech. Me, myself, I'm going to Amazon as a product manager over the summer. So yeah.
Is this in Seattle?
Seattle, yeah.
Good. I'll put you in touch with a few people who are at Amazon from my year, Ross. So maybe you can just connect with them and speak with those. We'll do that at the back end of this call.
Sure.
Let's talk about the culture itself. You've now immersed yourself for the last year. Some of the things that the school clearly aspires to bring in its candidates are leadership ability and ability to inspire others. They do focus on a collaborative spirit and a spirit of community, which I think every school really wants to be honest. But something that was unique to MIT was its focus on creating new solutions and producing new outcomes for the problems that are found. Talk about the experience within MIT Sloan and the culture that you've identified. If you can give a couple of examples, that would be great too.
No, I definitely feel that the culture at MIT is very, very unique. It's not formal at all. Like you will find people walking around in shorts, for example. And if I compare it to Harvard, which is just across the river, they are pretty formal in everything. Even the class, the way Sloan runs the class is very unique. It has a very hands-on component to it, which is what I love and I like that I'm here. For example, even in the core semester of ours, we had to do a project with a company, and we had to find out the company ourselves and do the project with them and all that, which is again very unique. And it continues to be so going through the semesters. There are a lot of courses in which you actually partner with companies and you do projects with them. So that is really unique. In terms of entrepreneurship, for example, I think again, if you are someone who is interested in entrepreneurship, this is the place to be. Even if you are not interested, I think after coming to Sloan, you will become interested because everyone around you would be sort of working on an idea, either with them or with someone else across MIT. And then at some point, you will think about maybe doing something, at least just for the sake of it. So that happens. There are so many resources. For example, today in the morning, I just came back from a pitching session. I was a finalist at Ideas Global Challenge.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So yeah, there are so many resources. There is a PKG Center, there is Tata Center, there is MIT Trust Center, there is a Legatum Center. Sloan itself provides a lot of other opportunities. Lot of competitions, hackathons, pitching sessions continue to happen in and around Boston and particularly again at MIT. So that culture definitely transcribes into Sloan. But at the same time, Sloan is kind of slightly different from MIT as a whole. MIT has this very though Sloan and MIT both are energetic, but I think MIT has this vibe of kind of slightly people are tensed. They are working on something which is really concrete, and so so there is definitely a tension around when you go to MIT and students there. Sloan is slightly relaxed, when the first day I entered the class, I was really it was very unique and new to me. The professor said, don't worry about the marks, the grades don't matter, don't worry. And there is this culture. Everyone says here grades don't matter, but at MIT probably not. But at Sloan, grades don't matter. And so people focus more on being hands-on, working with working on projects, working with companies.
I want to get into this is the thing that I'm not disclosed anywhere else, but I'll be joining MIT's executive program there and work with the Martin Trust Center for Entrepreneurship next year. So I look forward to this. I really look forward to immersing myself in this environment. As we wrap up the interview, if you were to give advice to people who are applying to MIT, Indians in particular who are applying to MIT or any other top business school, what would you say, A, is the toughest part of the entire journey, and B, what should they do differently? What would you have done differently that they should do during the MBA application process?
I think the one thing that I would have done differently, or as I said, I should have researched more on schools. Probably MIT would have come out as the one that I would have wanted to, but even then I should have done that. I started talking to people from different schools pretty late in the process. I think I would advise other students to do that as early as possible, so that I think talking to people gives you more insight into the schools, the culture, than anything else. Again, talking to people also gives you an insight into the curriculum, into what the process is like and everything, which you might not get that much sense by looking at the website. And actually, I tried to do that. Even for the interview, for example, I looked at the entire coursework that Sloan offers and used that in my interview. I had some questions around that in the interview, actually. But I would rather speak to someone and use that in the interview. So yeah, I think that is one advice that I will give to the students.
The other one is watch Admissions Roadmap MBA Success Stories with people like you, so that they can actually learn what it is to be in a school, what the culture of the school is, if they don't get to talk to anybody else. Dude, I appreciate your time in this process. You've been really kind in coming on late your evening, not going out for having fun and dinner, spending time to coach Indians on how to get into schools. I truly, truly appreciate it. Thank you so much for doing this interview, man.
Yeah,
bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.